Hey, welcome back to Book Talk. I'm John Hartness, publisher of Falstaff Books, and this is the place where my boss tells me that I should ask you to be sure to like and subscribe and ring the little bell to get notified if you enjoy this kind of content. And if you hate this kind of content, why are you still watching? What the fuck's wrong with you? Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'm here with a couple of awesome authors who, in a little bit, you may see a video down below that talks about them as being awesome editors. But for right now, they're writers and editors. And we're going to talk about this awesome new anthology we've got coming out called Nevermore, Tales Inspired by the works of Edgar Allan Poe. And I have with me here Misty Massey, who is the editor responsible for this mess, and Nicole Kurtz, who is one of the authors also partially responsible for this mess. And I have a story in here, and I did the interiors, and I paid for the things, so...
He's the money.
Actually, you guys are the money, because this was produced via Kickstarter, and thank you to everyone who backed the project. It looks amazing. We've got a fantastic cover by Lynn Hanson, who's an incredible artist that we love working with. And let's talk a little bit about this project, Misty. Why the hell would anybody want to do another anthology of Edgar Allan Poe stories? And why should anyone read another anthology of Edgar Allan Poe stories?
You know, I probably should come up with a brilliant and learned explanation of why it would be important to add to the Poe-related. But honest to God, the idea came about because I had written a short story based on a Poe story, and I really, really liked it, and I wanted to get it published. And so I said, hey, perhaps I can get a whole bunch of friends to come in with me, and they'll write Poe stories too, and we can make a book. Yay! And so that's really where it came from.
So the idea came to me. Misty brought the idea to me, and I said, I think that sounds great. Here are the rules. I'm not dealing with open submissions ever again because slush is awful and soul-sucking, and I ain't got time for that in my life.
Yep.
So if you can find enough authors that I'm already paying royalties to that are interested in writing a Poe anthology, then come back to me. Like 15 minutes later, she had a list. Something about a popular author or some such.
Well, and I was really excited that the people that I approached were, for the most part, I mean, I had one or two that weren't able to join in for whatever reason. That happens. It's the writing life. But for the most part, I was able to find a really diverse cast of writers for this thing, and that just thrilled me to death because we've read enough anthologies that are full of stories by old white men, and I think they've had their time for now, and we need to be looking at other writers that do not fill that demographic. And so I have writers of color, I have LGBTQ writers, I have female writers, I have male writers, but I have a lot of different kinds of writers, and that was really wonderful because it brings so many different attitudes to the stories that I might not have seen with just a lily white cast. So I'm very excited about the diversity of our group, and I'm very excited about the stories that you guys will get to read because they took these ideas and they ran with them and had so much fun. And I had a great time editing them because I was getting to, I've loved Poe since I was a kid. And I had such a wonderful time seeing what other people did with the ideas. So
Nicole, this may surprise you, but you are a female author and a woman of color, so...
And I'm also queer, so...
and also queer. And also one of the best damn horror short story writers I know. So that kind of trumps the others in a lot of terms for getting selected for this anthology. But your story in this book is The Telltale Tattoo.
Yes.
Tell me about your story. I just did the layout. I haven't read it yet.
Oh. So, you know, if you're familiar with Poe's The Telltale Heart, it's a very haunting tale, basically of a man's conscience, right? He murders the resident of a home, you know, buries him under the floorboards.
Spoilers!
I know, right? He continues to hear this beating heart of the person he murdered, and it kind of drives him mad. And so you have someone who's done a devious, deceitful act, even an act of betrayal, basically haunted by that act. And so in the Telltale Tattoo, we find ourselves in a police station, in an interrogation room with a person who has done a very deceitful, horrible act to someone else. And that person had a tattoo on their neck, which in the South or in most modern cities, neck tattoos have a certain stereotype about them. And so this guy feels justified in his actions when he comes to be very, his act and his conscience kind of come back and hurt him and mark him in unique ways.
Tattoos are actually a theme throughout the anthology, and I don't think that was anything Misty had intended. But the book opens with a story from Falstaff author and my tattoo artist, James Tuck.
A science fiction story.
Yes,
So,
which is way outside of what most of us have seen from James.
Yep.
True.
And then in my story, read Quincy's version, because of course I did. James is a character in the story because James is also fictionally Quincy Harker's tattoo artist. So
And round and round.
it's all these wild.
I see that meme of the guy with all the red strings and he's trying to explain all the connections. I see that.
And tattoos actually make an appearance in L.R. Gould's story too.
Oh, okay.
They're very important in L.R. Gould's story. So.
Wow. Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, I chose Mask of the Red Death because it's the one I knew the best.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm the closer in the anthology because I do the layouts and I get to pick what goes where. But also, I didn't write my story until the very end. I was the last story to be completed. Not just because I'm perennially late. We knew going in that we wanted the book to be about 100,000 words because that makes a nice, solidly sized book that I can sell for $18 to $20 at a convention, and people don't feel like they're getting shortchanged. Many of our authors wrote very tight stories for this anthology, and what got turned in for a final word count was 80,000 words. Which
we were depending on one author who is known for writing really long stories, and I think she turned in the shortest one in the book. So.
Yeah. So the other reason that I didn't do my story until the very end was purely a publishing thing. I knew how long we wanted the book to be, and so then that was my word count, because unlike the rest of the authors, well, I'm the publisher. I didn't get paid by the word. So I also knew that I could go long and it wouldn't affect the budget of the book.
Right.
Because when you're building anthologies, there's a lot of pieces. So I chose Mask of the Red Death, and what the frame that I used was a big gala hosted by the Fae, where they essentially unleash a biological weapon upon humanity to get back at humanity for some events in more recent Quincy Harker books, where humans try to wipe out all cryptids and supernatural beings. Well, this was Oberon deciding to take a shot of his very own, and Quincy Harker and James Tuck have to stop him. So I ended up writing a Quincy Harker novella to close out to close out the anthology. And your story that started this whole thing, tell us a little bit about the Cask of Amarillo.
Well, the Cask of Amarillo came about because I was invited to RavenCon a number of years ago. And part of the programming, they wanted everybody to read a Poe story out loud and be recorded, and they were going to put all of the recordings onto the web and let everybody see all the different authors reading Poe stories. And I chose The Cask of Amontillado because that is my very favorite Poe story. And when the schedule came out, somebody had written that I was reading The Cask of Amarillo. And I laughed and laughed, and I got in touch with the con, and I said, just so you know, you've made a mistake typing this, and it's really Amontillado. And they said, okay, no problem, thanks for letting us know, we'll fix it. The program went to press as Amarillo. And so when I got home from the con, I did read The Cask of Amontillado at the con, but when I got home, that title kept bouncing around in my head. And so I sat down one day. I was still working at the middle school at the time, and we were doing testing, which meant that I had to sit in a hallway for hours on end with nothing to do but read or write, because I couldn't have a computer with me and anything because the kids were testing. And so I'm sitting in the hallway with a notebook, and I pretty much wrote the whole story sitting in that hallway that day. So it's based on The Cask of Amontillado, but it's The Cask of Amarillo. It is a weird Western. And things turn out just a little bit differently at the end, so you'll have to read it and see.
Yeah, and that's another thing about this anthology and anthologies in general. You can go all over the place. You wrote a weird Western, which people would not be surprised at, given a lot of your recent publishing.
That's true.
I wrote essentially an urban fantasy police procedural, which is most of what I write. Sounds like you wrote a crime story.
A horror crime story.
A horror crime story,
Definitely
which is
horror.
right in your wheelhouse.
That's what I write.
Yeah, so.
And we have science fiction,
Yep.
and we have fantasy. So
We have other weird Westerns.
Yep.
We have all kinds of stuff. So no matter what you're into, you can check out Nevermore. Pre-orders are available now at the Falstaff Shopify site, and you will be able to get copies of these at most of the spring and summer conventions, starting with RavenCon at the end of April. We will have these on hand in Richmond. So come out, come see us under the big gay book sign at any of the cons where we're hard to miss. We roll like a damn street gang. So we're hard to miss. So come see us at a con, pick up your copy of Nevermore, and then you can spend the whole rest of the convention chasing autographs, like you're a kid at WrestleMania weekend.
yeah, and a good many of the authors in the book are going to be at RavenCon, so
Right.
Yes.
a reasonable amount.
Several,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And then more will be at Con Carolinas, etc., etc.
Yep.
It's really great that it's available first at RavenCon. It's serendipitous.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of work to make sure that we could get the backer copies shipping out by RavenCon, so that, because the Kickstarter backers need to get theirs first, or at least have it shipped first. But then we'll be able to get them into everyone's hot little hands. All right. Well, so when we're looking at convincing people that they should read another Poe anthology, what are you going to tell folks?
Well, this particular one, lots of diverse authors, which you don't always get in Poe anthologies. The demographic tends to be white male because Poe is a white male. And if you see renditions, they're usually not with these types of voices or genres. How often do you see in a Poe anthology a weird Western or a science fiction story with Poe? It's very different. They're usually horror retellings. And so this one has a lot of other genres included, which makes it unique. Urban fantasy, crime drama, horror crime story, lots of very different genres makes this one a kind of a smorgasbord of Poe stories or Poe influenced stories.
Because Poe wasn't just a horror writer.
No.
And that seems to get lost in the siloing of creatives that we see today. It's, oh, well, you do this thing. Well, I do lots of things. And Poe did lots of things.
Yes,
so now we're bringing lots of different voices and lots of different styles to those stories.
Yeah.
All right, so get out there and get this ordered. Come see us at a con and get it signed. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to get notified. And I'll be back before you even know I'm gone.